working on this front PTO. Can't find much videos on YouTube about it, so I'm going to make a couple here, and maybe I can help some folks out as I learn. You can see that bearing broke there. It's got this little bushing on this bearing that rides in this lock, sort of lock washer. I don't know if you can see close. That's out of round intentionally. You put this on the front shaft, and then first, and slide the bearing on, which I'll show you when I put it back together. But and then the bearing inside of that is out of round as well, so it acts as a cam and it locks. This washer locks that bearing in place. But I've been having trouble with it coming loose on me, and I think this extra hole here is to maybe put a punch in to tighten it a little bit tighter, because all I've been able to do is kind of hand tighten it and then tighten down the lock nut in place. So I'm going to spend a little time working on this and make a couple videos. Hopefully I can help some of you folks as I learn, like I said. Alright folks, catch you in a few. Alright folks, here's the front PTO I was talking about, and I'm taking it off because I'm thinking the bearing is loose again, so I'm going to take that off and make sure the bearing's tight before I throw the mower deck on to mow some lawn. I just got done doing some tilling, and this Cub Cadet's not a showpiece, so I guess you could call it one of those they call those trucks that are kind of rusted out rat rides, or cars rat rides. This is a rat cub. Not pretty, but it's a workhorse. Alright folks, I'll catch you in a bit. Alrighty folks, I've got that PTO off, and I thought maybe it came loose again, but it looks like maybe the bearing's not loose. Still tight on there. I checked the manual, and they tell you to turn this cam in the direction of the motor rotation, and show an arrow turning to the left. So you hold the bearing and then you turn this cam and it locks that, and then you tighten down the lock nut. It's not loose at all, so I guess I'll just put it back together. But I just bought this new bearing here because the old one broke, so I wanted to double check and make sure it wasn't loose. Yeah, we'll double check the nut here and make sure that's tight, and then I guess I'll put it back together and do a little mowing. Maybe I'll make a video of putting it back together just to show you. I did find a couple of those online, how folks are putting them back together, but when you put this bearing on, they say to make it flush with the shaft, the front of the shaft. So when I installed that, that's what I did. And then I turned that lock nut. I don't know, I may loosen that up and take my little punch and try to tighten it a little more. I don't know, but it feels like it's on there pretty tight, so maybe I won't even mess with it at all. If it's not broken, don't fix it. What they always used to say anyway. Alright folks, one thing I did have to do folks to get that PTO off is there's this this PTO brake that's hooked to this adjustment bar, which is hooked to this lever. So I had to there's a cotter pin over here. I had to take that cotter pin out in order to get that PTO off. So just one little tidbit there for you. Looks like I got a loose bolt there, but okay folks. Okay folks, I'm about to install this PTO. You see this bolt? This goes on. First it's got a point on it, and what this is going to do is there's holes in this PTO. The one with the point goes in first, and what's going to happen is that bearing, this is going to slide over the bearing, and the bearing's going to go inside there. I don't know if you can see that, and it'll butt up to that flange you see there, and you see that hole right at the tip of my finger. That pointed bolt will come through that and lock this PTO around that bearing. You see there's the 3 holes. So the bearing slides in there. You slide this on and then tighten those pointed bolts, and it holds this onto that bearing. It's clear as mud, right? So that's about it. So once you tighten those pointed bolts down, there's a lock nut, which is another hex head bolt that goes over the, you put it in the same hole as the pointed bolt and tighten that down, and it just holds everything in place. So I'm going to do that next. Okay. Alright folks, you see how I don't know what this thing's called, but it's part of it's bolted, or it's on the shaft. It's part of this pulley. You see how there are holes in that. These holes that hold the PTO onto that bearing they align with those holes. One there, there's 3 of them. So that way you can get the Allen or the hex head wrench in there and tighten them down. All right. And just one more little detail, folks. I've got these little clips, and when I was looking in the manual, I couldn't figure out what they were talking about, how to install these. All they do is show a picture, but they go in here and they go behind this kind of gear looking thing between that flange, and apparently there's not a lot of rattling when this clutch is running. It's a tension, it's kind of a tension spring. It presses it just presses this flange, and it presses against this gear. So I'll put those back in. I don't know how, I mean, I think it'll work without them, but we'll put them in. It's kind of tricky to put them in because there's 3 of them, so you don't slide this PTO over the bearing until you get them all in place. Then you push it on the bearing and they'll lock into that flange. Alright folks. Okay folks, I've got these anti-rattle springs or whatever they're called in place, and now I'm going to just press this bearing, or this PTO over the bearing there. You see it slid in place. So now I'm going to take those. I've already got the pointed screws in there. I put them in beforehand, so they're in there. So I'll tighten those down, and then I'll put the lock hex head bolt in there to lock them in place. So I'm going to tighten these down. There is a torque on them, and you can find a manual online that tells the torque, but I'm just going to do it the old-fashioned way and give it a good tightening. Okay. Okay folks, I'm going to put these lock nuts in next, and just slide them in there and get them started here. One thing I would say about these PTOs, if you got an old one, you can rebuild it. You can buy a kit. I think the kit's like $60. But man, if you got to buy them new or rebuilt on eBay, I bought this one. I think it cost me 250 clams. So I think I'm gonna do a little rebuilding. I've got an old one, so hopefully I can make a video of that. So there, I've got one of those lock nuts in. Turn it to the next one where I can reach it here. So I'll mark that. I see some folks pull this whole shroud off to do it. I don't have time to pull that off. I gotta mow the lawn and I gotta get back in that garden, so efficiency is a key here at the old Farmitecture headquarters. This seems to be the best way to go through the side here, and the muffler in the way and everything. Let's see how it's tight. Tight quarters here for working. Okay folks, I got that thing installed and ready to work. My battery's dying on this camera, so I'm going to leave it at that. Catch up with you next time.